That's what I'm talking about. Normally, of course, you'd be hearing that on a Tuesday, but today you were actually hearing it on another time. You were hearing it on Thursday. It is about 10:45 a.m. And welcome, Arvanauts, to a very special session of Adventures in Middle-earth, Day 37, Wilderland Adventures. This is A Darkness in the Marshes, but it is a special session, and we'll talk about why it is so special in just a minute. Before I get to that, just a couple of quick reminders. This is the way to support the stream. If you haven't done so already, please follow the channel. That is always appreciated. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to check out the YouTube channel where you can see past broadcasts of the stream. !ArvTube for that. !ArvCord will get you over to my Discord channel where you can hang out with the Arvanauts in between streams. !ArvTweets will allow you to check out my Twitter and subscribing to me over there on my Twitter. You can see when I go live. You can check out my musings on writing, music, teaching, streaming, family, politics on occasion, things like that. And while we're on the subject of tweets, I noticed dreaming of me doing this. !tweet would allow you to retweet the stream. So if you were on Twitter, please do that. We want to be able to reach out to a larger community beyond just what we get on Twitch and continue to broaden out the people that we speak to on a daily and weekly basis. So please do that if you've done so already. Thank you. !Arv Shop will allow you to check out my merchandise area where right now you can get the Infinity and Beyond stuff, but soon you will be able to get other things as well from some of my other campaigns. !Arv Shop for that. !Arv Treon is the Patreon, which is currently sitting at $377.96. My goal for that is to get to $420 by the end of the year. So we got some time to do it, but I would love to be able to move that upwards. And again, cool stuff for the channel and cool stuff for you that you can get as well. So please consider doing that. And Arv Treon for that. And last but certainly not least, that sub button. We are sitting at 59 subs. My goal there is to get to 80 subs by the end of the year. We are sitting at 59 subs, so we are in very good shape. That is also a way that you can use those custom emotes, and you can check out various things and support the channel in various ways. So if you have not already done so, please consider supporting us by subbing there as well. Now, today we have got a very special session, which I will describe in a minute, of Adventures in Middle-earth. I normally don't stream on Thursdays, but I'm still on break, so I'm going to be able to do that today. Tomorrow, I will be back tomorrow evening for my normal Friday night stream. I will be streaming a mini marathon session of Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD, and then on Saturday, we will return to the world of space, where we will move back to the world of Esper Genesis. Next Tuesday, we will get back into Adventures in Middle-earth again with the full group of Wilderland Adventures peoples. That will be happening at our normal time of Tuesday at noon. And then we'll move on to, in the afternoon at 4 p.m., we'll be over at GOG with Pen and Pixels and D&D with GOG as we play Storm King's Thunder. That is next Tuesday. Next Friday, a week from this Friday, we will be having a special, hopefully live-streamed event from my Boston area release party for the album 5 Years Later, my band's album, which just recently came out. What's up, Echo? And which and speaking of Echo, someone who may just have seen this album, I believe, may know something about this album. So that is going to be coming out a week from this Friday, and that is going to be starting at about 8 p.m. Eastern on that Friday. So I'm going to try to live stream that, and then Saturday we'll be back to Infinity and Beyond with D&D Curse of Strahd. So we got a busy couple of weeks coming up, which is super awesome. But right now, as I unmute myself, we have a very special session to introduce ourselves to. And so with no further ado, I'm going to head over here to, wait for it. There we go, to the man who's at the bottom of the column. I wanted to make this super intimidating, you know, so just make it the very bottom of the column. I am here and you are here. But no, it is, of course, our good friend Will from Encounter Roleplay, who has returned, and this is a very special solo session covering the events of Robar Staunton when he actually left. But I will start by saying Happy New Year to Will. And Will, how is life in your neck of the woods, sir? How you doing?
Oh, life's great, yeah. Happy New Year. Goodness, it has been a while since we've been here, so I'm excited to learn what's sort of happened in the story while I've been away, and to figure out what's going on with our good pal Robar Staunton, who I'll be playing today. He's a Dunedain ranger who his sister is in some trouble, and he's on an eagle. and that's all I know. So
That's basically it.
that's it.
This is going to be we're going to be testing out the aerial combat rules today. So a lot of eagle versus eagle combat. No, not quite the case. But no, it's great to have Will back. And we were just talking off stream about Will's channel is blowing up in a good way. And so a lot of good things happening for Will and for the folks over at Counter Roleplay. You should absolutely be following the channel. It is awesome sauce, good stuff. And yes, Will is back with us officially. But today's session, I set up with Will because I did this before for Don Cairo in my Infinity and Beyond group. I like these solo sessions because it gives us a chance sometimes to kind of delve into more of a bit of backstory. And in this particular case, because Will, the real life player, had to leave for about a month to attend to channel things, we had to have Robar go away. And of course, Inga and others of the party were none too pleased about this, or I should say Inga in particular was like, how could he leave us at this time? And so many of you might be wondering, for those of you who've been following this, what exactly did happen to him? And so this is going to give us a chance to talk about that. So Robar, of course, his family, he came originally from a noble family. Those of you who've been watching for this will remember this. And he is now, of course, a Dunedain who has been traveling the land for a long time and had believed basically that his family was essentially gone, that the glory of his family was diminished, that there was no family left basically to return to. And then he began to get these little clues and bits of information coming from his sister. Originally, he wasn't sure who it was. Then it became clear that it might have been his sister Melina. And now he knows for sure, based upon notes and bits of information and things like that. I do approve of that D&D profile. Yes, Echo. Absolutely, I approve of it. It's good stuff. And I'm glad you got the CD, by the way. As he's been able to get these notes, it was clear that something has been going on, and more recently it's been discovered that the person who's been trying to raise the family up from its sort of destructed roots and sort of reestablish the Staunton name is his sister Melina, was responsible for doing this. But Melina now is in trouble. He had gathered information from a character named Black Tom, who lived up in the West Anduin Vales, I think, possibly the West Upper Vales. I don't remember if it was Anduin or Upper Vales. Where Black Tom basically told him that there was this guy who had come and basically demanded this guy, Black Tom's fealty, who's Black Tom's a farmer, but he's sort of a kind of a badass farmer who lives more or less in a small mini fortress, you might almost say, and doesn't like being told what to do. And so under these circumstances, what's up, Genly? How you doing? So under these circumstances, this character came who said that he was from Vigland. Now, Vigland is not super well known to Robar, but Black Tom explained to him that Vigland was this guy who basically fancied himself a leader of men, someone who wanted to be able to do what he had done. Oh my goodness, a raid from Wenchkin. What's up, Wenchkin? How you doing, man? Thank you for the raid. That he was this character who was trying to basically gather the affinity and the fealty of people all the way from basically the Western Eves all the way up to the East Middle Vales and eventually the East Upper Vales, where his base of power is. And there's a lot of these sort of small 2-bit bandit types. In fact, Robar and party dealt with such a person like this with Valter doing with this. But Valter was from the south and was sort of a smaller deal. This guy Vigland, from the way Black Time described it, was a lot smarter. He took a lot longer to sort of build up his crew. He gradually gained the fealty of some of those who felt they had been abandoned by their protectors in the north after Smaug and the Battle of the Five Armies. There were some people in the Grey Mountain Narrows up there and in the sort of western side of northern Mirkwood who felt like they had basically been abandoned to their fate. Whether that's true or not, or whether it's just that they were busy, that's a whole other thing. But that's how they felt. And so Vigland was able to basically bring some of those to his banner. All of this matters because at the end of the session where Robar left, and again, thank you so much to the Raiders. Thank you, Wenchkin and everybody. I appreciate it very much. Welcome, everybody. At the very end of when they were about to leave Mountain Hall, Eagle, he was asked to come to the, Robar was asked to come to the top of this area where the Horn of Sounding was to be found, and he found there 2 characters, a ghostly, beautiful ghostly figure, female, and a great eagle. One of the great eagles, in fact, that I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was the great eagle that Tawny had actually saved before when they first encountered the Lord of the Eagles. And the eagle basically explained that the Lord of the Eagles had sent him there because word had come via butterfly, sparrow, and then eagle, that Melina was in trouble and that she needed her brother's aid and that she had been held captive. Robar, of course, did not know where, and in fact, even the eagle didn't know where. He knew only the sort of general area in which to look. However, and I'm going to leave this up to Robar to decide, you could probably put 2 and 2 together because Melina had made clear that she was heading to the East Upper Vales to deal with the threat of this guy, because if she was going to raise the family name to prominence again, one of the things she was going to have to do was deal with interlopers. And one of those interlopers would be someone who would challenge the Staunton's rule and would challenge the rule of the good forces basically in the, the East Upper Vales, West Upper Vales area. And so it's a good guess that he would be the one who might actually have her captured. And so the eagle actually asked Robar to leave with him. Robar decided to do so, informed Tawny of his plans, left a note for the rest of the group, and then set off as the party went south. The details of what happened to the party, those of you who have been following this stream will know, and if not, you should go check it out. And on Tuesday, you will see more details. Short version, they're in a lot of trouble. But in the meantime, Robar on his eagle is heading to the north. And so we're going to pick up now with Robar on the back of this eagle as I unmute. There we go. As I unmute the wind sound. On the back of his eagle. And I'm going to ask Robar what you want to do. So the eagle is basically heading up to the north and only knows the general vicinity of where you're heading, which is the East Upper Vales, which is like about, here-ish. But he doesn't have any specifics in terms of like where exactly he should be headed. So that sort of is up to you. What do you want to try to tell him to seek for? You can say whatever you want to him, actually, but I mean, like, I will now hand it over to you.
Good question. I think Robar will say, something along the lines of keep an eye out for any signs of a large encampment, maybe a tower, somewhere where a large group could be hidden. I suspect that whoever has my sister won't be alone.
And the eagle sort of is silent for a moment and then says, "So, you think it is another one of your kind that has her entrapped then?"
It could well be. I'm not sure yet. The word that the sparrow brought was exactly precise, but whoever has my sister will pay for it.
He says, "In that case, I would say there are 2 places that we might look. One is called the Mouth of Dust. It is the pass that leads from the vales of Anduin and into the narrows between Mirkwood and the Grey Mountains. There is a huge standing stone which marks the entrance to the pass. It is used in the past in ancient days by the dwarves, but now is the source of much evil. There have been times when my master have gone and his followers have gone hunting there and have killed some straggling orcs and goblins and evil men, but it is possible that they could be hidden. We cannot be everywhere at once. The other is a place called the Elfwood. It is somewhat to the south of there and can be found right against the eastern side, the western side of northern Mirkwood. That is also a possibility, and there are rumors there of places that we cannot go. The forest defeats us from a distance, for it has tree cover, and we cannot see, even with our keenest of eyes, below to where evil may lurk and stir. Which of these choices is more likely to be the right one, I cannot say, but those are what I know of."
Standing stone sounds good, but then the Elfwood. I know these characters, they would likely try and obscure themselves and hide away like the rats that they are. I think the Elfwood is our best bet.
He nods and he says, then we will waste no time in going there. And he sort of banks. And I should say that now you've traveled on the eagle thing before, but traveling on an eagle, you know, when there's just one he doesn't have to worry about anyone else around him, is really impressive. You know, the wind blows past you, and there are multiple times where you feel, am I going to hold on to this eagle or am I going to be thrown backwards? But somehow he has a way of sort of cutting through the wind that despite the speed and just miles passing below you as he travels, seemingly, you know, passing by in mere seconds, you never actually, you know, it feels thrilling but not frightening is basically the way to put it. And so he soars along and then begins to spiral in down here. So I would say about there. Now, the Eagle's Eyrie, you started out all the way down. About basically here was the Mountain Hall. And so he takes you from here and then goes up here and passes the Eyrie. And if you look to the right, you can see the Carrick, which is the large standing rock where the trial took place. You may remember of the folks, Bjorn, in attendance. And then he travels farther north here and goes all the way up with the Anduin, keeping the Anduin to his east. And then when you make the decision, okay, this is where we're going to go, is the Elfwood, then at that point he banks sort of sharply to the right and goes this way. And it is more or less here where he spirals down and sets down to the ground. And as he sort of settles down, you can see the sort of ominous look of the woods not that far away. And he lands a little bit farther than he needs to, and than you might have expected him to. And as he kind of lands, you know, flies down and stops, he says, have you spent any time in Mirkwood before?
More time than I would have liked to. Yes. In fact, that's where I first met my friends.
And he nods and he says, then you will know that there is much that stirs within that ancient wood. They are not friends to eagles. I would help if I could, but I will be of little value to you within branches and trees. Eagles were meant for air, not for ground and pine needles. Yet I will wait here. Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, you've already done more than enough.
And he nods and he says, I will wait here then. If I have not heard from you in some time, I may travel and find my lord and several others to return. But otherwise, I wish you good fortune. May you find your family as you left them.
Thank you, friend. I will.
And he kind of bows and waits. Now, so the spot that he's left you with is near where he defines this thing as as I said, the Elfwood. The Elfwood, let me actually place it for you here, which is right about there. Yeah, the Elfwood is not that far north. Actually, I probably should have. This is not quite right. He banks a little faster than that. So he would have ended up actually about, there we go. So like that. The Elfwood is right about here. And the Elfwood, you probably would know from your travels, was an area that was originally not part of Mirkwood. It was not as tangled or dark. There was a little light that could make it through the canopy of the dark green leaves. And in times past, the elves of the woodland realm would come here sometimes to feast and to make merry, and sometimes you had heard stories of elves that would leave the shadows of those woods and would go down to speak to the Anduin River and then come back. But these days, the elves spend little time there as the Elfin King has increasingly pulled his people back into the underside of Mirkwood, and so now it is abandoned like the Mouth of Dust to the north would have been. But it still has some good that lingers there, as everything that is touched by the elves does. So you could head directly there, or you could try to head around it. You're sort of placed in a spot where you could head directly towards it, and it's almost like a little bit of a, kind of like an arc. Let me see if I can make it a small line. Like, it's almost like that is where the sort of area of forest sticks out. So you could either avoid that completely, or you could go directly into it. It's sort of up to you as to how you want to handle it.
He feels most at home in the woods, even here in Mirkwood. So he knows that he can probably go better unseen
Okay.
through them. So he's gonna head straight through.
Okay. What is he looking for? Obviously, you're looking for your sister, but I mean, more specifically,
Right,
what are
right.
you
Yeah,
looking for?
no, more specifically, it's signs of inhabitants or people walking through here recently, or trees that have been cut down, um, tracks in the in the forest path, and like the smell, I guess, of like in cases like a fire going, maybe a burning smell would carry.
Okay.
Yeah, that's using his ranger senses, I guess.
I'm going to have you please, and thank you for the follow, by the way, and hello, Kookie. I'm going to have you make a... let me have you make a perception check for me, I think, as you get to the edge of this forest.
This is where Robar being on his own is the worst, because usually he has a party to carry his terrible rolls.
Maybe by himself he'll really shine. Maybe that's all he needed. See, look at that. See, that's all it is. It's just the pressure. He gets away from them and everything's fine. I assume you want like a video camera, right? You're like, did everyone saw that? Everyone saw that I did that. Okay. So there's a few things you notice. First of all, there is the usual sound of animal life, wildlife around as you were just getting to the edge. But you can also hear from somewhere in the Elfwood, although it's some distance away, what sounds like a faint whistling. Now, that could be a bird call, but it's very regular and very continual, and it doesn't, I mean, normally there's variation, right? Like it'll be like a
look around for the elephant.
Right, exactly. Aha! Exactly. There's the sound of a call, and then there's like space, but this is like constant. And it is some distance from you, and it is in the wood.
I'm gonna sort of enter into my sneak mode, I guess, and try and, if I can locate where the sound was coming from, I'm gonna slowly head towards that while still listening out for that same call.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to make a stealth check for me, please. And also, hello to Rainy Keys. You heard burbs. You like burbs?
18, goodness gracious.
Wow, see? All right. So you silently creep through, making very little noise. And as you get closer, you can hear that there's another sound that's been added to it. So there's the... right? But every third time, so you... and there's definitely another sound from elsewhere in the wood, nearby it, but not the same direction, that responds with that every third time. And it's coming, as I say, not far away, but not in the same direction as the way you're headed for the...
I'm going to try and follow or try and stealthily head in the direction of the responder, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Of the whoop noise.
Okay.
Let's see if I can spot anyone out here.
All right. As you are continuing to sort of like head off to the left, to the western side, and you hear this, every so often, every third time, you get closer and closer. And I will need you to make one more stealth check, please.
Okay, stealth is 16.
Okay. So as you get close, you hear what sounds like rustling and movement, and then low talking. Definitely talking between several human voices. And they seem to be male voices, they seem low. And they are talking with each other, but you can't make out what they're saying as of yet, nor can you see anything yet.
I have to get closer. Now I know that they're there. Yeah, I'm considering like maybe at some point when I get closer, like ferreting up a tree. But
Okay.
right now I'm too far away to be able to heal them, so he kind of crouches down, unlimbers his great bow, nocks an arrow, and starts to continue through the woods towards the sound of the male voices.
Okay. As you are crawling through the woods, you can sort of moving your way carefully as you suggested. And you then get close enough that you can hear the conversation very quietly, but it sounds more or less something like this. If it's to be done, then it should be done now. I don't think we're strong enough yet. The truth is, we will never be strong enough if we wait out here. We spend our time starving and hunting for nothing. In the meantime, his group grows ever larger. Eventually, he will sweep over everything here. We must remove him from power now while we have the chance. I would do so if I thought there was a chance to, but you know what he is like. I know what he is like, which is why we must take our move. And this is the sort of discussion that you hear going on. Now that you're closer, you can hear that what you thought was two males may not be. One of them is definitely a lower voice, but the other one is speaking in a low voice but may not in fact be male. It might be a male and a female talking to each other possibly, but you still can't, could just be a high voice theoretically as well, but you still can't see either one of them.
Instead of getting vision on them, I'm going to call out with my own bird call, echoing the call, expecting the response. So it's a sort of woo, 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 woo.
Okay. So you're doing the original call, right?
The original call to sort of be the caller and expect for them to be a response, yeah.
Okay, so you do that, and you hear a... Psst. You heard that? That didn't sound quite... It came from much closer. Someone is upon us.
I'll call out, "Hail, friends!"
And there's dead silence.
I'll come out of hiding and step towards them with my hands raised.
Okay. As you break through the underbrush, you can see that there are actually two people that are facing you. One of them has got his axe drawn. He is an impressive-looking figure. He has braided red hair, just sort of, braid two long braids hanging down. He has no helm. It lies by his feet. He has these sort of thick, muscled legs that you can see that are bare despite the cold, and he's got some kind of a very thick leather tunic of some kind around him, and his face looks weathered and stern. Not old, though. He's probably, well, certainly he's going to be younger than you would guess, because he does not look like a Dunedain. But, I mean, he looks, even for a human, he doesn't look old, but definitely weathered, as if he spent much of his life braving the elements, basically. Next to him is a woman who's actually taller than him. It is a woman, a very beautiful woman, actually, who is very young. She has blonde hair, which is tied back behind her, and she seems to have no axe or anything like that on her, but you do see on the ground by her feet is a sword, and she is standing and kind of looking at you with these piercing blue eyes. And the man who was holding the axe says, "Come forth."
I step forwards. "I mean you no ill."
"That will be seen by your actions, not by your words." And you're immediately aware of a presence behind you, Robar, and you sort of kind of look vaguely to see that there's three more men behind you. It's like they just... ta-da! Like just emerged from nowhere.
Right.
Like they just, and they don't do anything, but they're just standing there behind you. And the man says, "That will be determined by your actions, not by your words. Speak. Why are you eavesdropping on us?"
"I am here to find my sister. I believe she has been captured. My name is Robor Staunton, and I think we may be after the same person, or people."
And the man's eyes narrow, and he opens his mouth as if to speak, but the woman stands forward, holds up a hand, and says, Wait, Thunar." And she steps forward. "Did you say Staunton?"
"I did."
And she glances at Thunar, who doesn't say anything, and then she says, There was such a person brought to our camp, and brought in chains and shackles. Her name, she said, was Melina Staunton. Is this whom you seek?
It is. She is my sister, and I've sworn to rescue her from whatever brigand has captured her.
And Thunar kind of looks at you and kind of almost sort of does a double take and says, "You expect to be able to rescue her by walking into the camp, I suppose, and asking for her nicely. She is held by Vigland, and Vigland does not let those that he has with him go without great price. You think you, one man, can overcome a camp of hundreds?
I need not overcome them. If I can sneak in, disguise myself. I've done so before with the bandit so-called king, Voltar.
And he looks at you and says, I have heard of this Voltar. He was a pretender. He was a mere boy compared to someone like Vigland. And Vigland, since hearing of the fall of Voltar, has grown ever more cautious. It is possible you dealt with him through trickery or through force of arms, but you will do neither here. And the woman says, Yet it is important that we listen to all those who may be able to aid us, Thunar. And Thunar says, We have no idea if we can even trust him. Someone strange eavesdropping on our conversation. This could well be a spy of Vigland's. You know this, Aestid. And Aestid says, I know only that your actions are too quick and run ahead of your thoughts. This is one man surrounded by our people. There can be no harm in listening to his tale. And Thunar kind of shakes his head. Your compassion will be our undoing. And he sort of turns away and walks back to the center of the clearing. And now that you have a chance to sort of look more, you can see that there is what looks like a small camp, but there's only really a camp big enough to hold what looks like two people, basically. These two people that you see in front of you. The other ones behind you, those three that are standing behind you, you don't know, like, they clearly wouldn't be able to stay here, but obviously they are somehow connected to this Thunar. And Aestid says, Very well. We will listen to your tale. But you must tell us more of who you are and why you have come to seek your sister. We must know more if we are to trust you.
I was brought here on the wings of an eagle. Word was brought to me by butterfly, sparrow, then eagle. I've been traveling with friends of mine for some time now. We're friends of Beorn, enemies of bandits, and all foul things that lurk in the Mirkwood. My sister sent word that she has been captured, and I came as fast as I could. It was only a few days past since I was south of here, far south as well. Now I have dealt with bandits before, but perhaps none of Vigland's quality. And so when I overheard your conversation, while thinking you enemies, I learned that perhaps you were more. Could be friends. If this Vigland has done you some ill as well, then perhaps we could work together. I am one of the Stauntons, an old line descended from kings. I'm one of the Dunedain.
And Thunar says, he's now sitting on the ground, and he says, sort of his knees drawn up, and says sullenly without looking at you, I have heard of these Dunedain. These wanderers who travel from place to place, speak of ancient glory, of connections to old races, Númenórean blood they say they have. Yet I have seen nothing from the Dunedain but more riddles in the dark. If it is true that you have some power and glory, you should have taken it before allowing someone like Vigland to seize control. This is the legacy of your neglect, if you are whom you say. And Astid sort of turns and looks like she's going to say something to him, but then sort of thinks better of it and looks back at you.
Perhaps you're right. That does not get us anywhere now.
And he sort of shakes his head and stands, and he says to his men, "Bring him here." And so his men seem to be, they don't force you, but they're kind of like suggesting strongly that you move forward into the camp.
I'll do so, yeah.
And so you go next to this, there's no fire burning at the moment, but next to what looks like kind of the center area where there are some logs, some fallen logs that are standing around serving as benches. And Thunar points to one of them and says, "Sit." And he also sits down, and then Astid sits down on a third log looking.
I'll take a seat.
And he says, "Very well. I will tell you my story, and we will see whether indeed you plan to do more than simply speak riddles and vanish as so many of your kind do. I am Thunar, and there was a time when Vigland and I were the closest of brothers. We were, in all but blood, indeed that title, kin to each other. I was the best of Viglar's warriors, the bravest, the strongest, the most skilled with axe and bow, and I do not speak these things of myself. I repeat what was said of me by him." And he sort of looks at Astid and then says, "You realize if I say more, I may be revealing everything to this spy, if that is what he is." And Astid says, "He has given us no reason to believe he is a spy as of yet." And Thunar shakes his head and sighs and says, 2 years ago, Vigland, his son Viglar, and I went hunting in Mirkwood. We were several hours into the hunt when we heard a rustling in the underbrush, and then breaking free, a huge black boar, enormous, the size of a pony perhaps, came charging at us, tusks as long as my forearm. I barely avoid its first charge, and as I proceeded to fight it, all of us attacking at will, leaping forward and backwards. Yet this creature was spawned, perhaps from evil itself. Perhaps Gundabad had produced it in one of its forges, for it with inhuman speed gored me in the side and hurled me into a ravine. Then I thought that my friend Vignund would come to help me, and yet both he and his coward son Viglar abandoned me to my fate. But I did not die, Dunedain. I do not die from wounds and speak of riddles in the darkness. I survived the wound, and gradually over many months living on the dead carrion that I could find to sustain me, managed to build myself into health. I wandered alone through Mirkwood for weeks before emerging from the darkness of the wood. And now I am again strong enough to lead hunts and raiding parties, and I am gathering those who have grown tired of the cowardice of Viglar and Vignund. I have yearned to hate that which I once loved, and I will bring Vigland to the dust if I may for what he did to me. And as he's sort of looking at you, you get a chance, he kind of pulls up his tunic and you see this just massive scar just on the left side, which clearly didn't heal quite right. And then he lowers it again and stares at you, just like his eye is just burning into you.
I see. Well, then if what you say is true, then this Vigland is a villain unlike any other, and must be slain to bring an end to the misery of this place and your kin. I do not claim any rule or any ownership of these lands for my blood. I'm merely here to save my sister. Now, if you think me a spy, then kill me. But if you think that I can be useful and a friend, then let me prove myself. Let me journey with you into this Vigland's camp, and let us get some revenge for you and I.
Make a persuasion check for me, please. And I'm going to ask you to do this at +2.
Okay.
And I want to remind everybody, anyone who's got inspiration could use
a 10.
inspiration.
It's a kind of 10.
Revenge leads to hate, hates leads to... we'll see. Well, I'm sold. Dreaming of Me says, if any of you have inspiration that you could use to give to Robar, do you wish to give Robar inspiration for this persuasion check? Or not? In case you're curious, let's take a look and see who actually has it.
I may be dead.
Well, I might not actually make this. We'll see. What do we think? Anyone? Doesn't look like we got anyone in the moment. So just a reminder that you can, if you support by subbing at the tier 2 level or support the Patreon at the $10 level, you get an inspiration that you can use in this situation. But since we do not seem to have an inspiration available at the moment, Thunar sort of looks at you as if trying to get your measure, and then shakes his head and says, "Your words are bravely spoken, but they remain words, and I have heard such things before. The truth is that Vigland himself is beyond our reach, or at least beyond our reach at the moment. It would be suicide to attack him. But his son, the odious Viglar, might be more vulnerable. Yet I cannot go into such an endeavor to go after his son without believing that I have someone I can trust. Some of the men that I have brought to me, I do trust. And yet, we are but a fraction of what Vigland commands." And he sort of kind of thinks to himself, and Aestid says, "Then perhaps, if this Robar could help you, perhaps if he were to do what must be done with Viglar, that would allow us to trust him, and perhaps we could attempt to rescue his sister." And Thunar turns and says, "You would do this? You know what this means. You are speaking of killing your own brother." And Aestid shakes her head and turns away and says, "He ceased to be my brother when he approved of my betrothal, as you well know, Thunar."
I raise my eyebrows at all the family drama I've just walked into.
Yep.
Aced okay.
And she turns back to you and says, "I am the daughter of Vigland. I am betrothed to one of his followers, a man named Othbald. Othbald is an awful, awful man. I cannot tell you what he has done to me, but..." And she sort of shakes her head and falls silent and then says, "My brother said nothing when I was betrothed to him, except that it was Father's will. And so I escaped when I could. I planned to escape my betrothal and flee across Wilderland. But if I go now, Othbald will surely pursue me and bring fire and bloodshed with him. Thus we have been drawn together, Thunar and I seeking vengeance, I seeking removal of my betrothal, he seeking vengeance against my brother. There was a time when I loved my family, but they have not acted in a way of love." And so Thunar looks back at you and folds his arms and he says, "As you see, there is much to consider. Would you be caught between this group, drawn into this tragedy?"
All I ask for is the chance to have a family. I have never known my sister. But now, perhaps this is my only chance. And so, whether it be with fire, bloodshed, or deception, I will help you. Though I do not claim to understand the complexities of what this may entail, nor do I wish to kill anyone that, well, you understand. This isn't my affair.
And he kind of nods and looks at you, and then says, "Sorry, let me get that phone." And then he says, "That'll be just a moment." He nods and looks at you, and then says, "There is perhaps one way. If we can figure out a way to draw out Viglar on his own, and do what must be done with him, if you can do this without malice or treachery, then perhaps we can come to an understanding on how to save your sister. But the path will be perilous, and the attempt difficult."
Very well. I have this letter that my sister sent me. It may not be much proof, but at least it's something.
Asted holds out a hand for it.
Yeah, I hand it to Asted, which is just my letter, the letter to me from my sister. I think I actually got a couple of notes that she's left me.
Yeah. And also, there's also, don't forget the silver key, but they may not know what that is. But
I'm actually going to hold that one back.
Okay.
For now, I almost thought about like, hey, let's go see my eagle. I've got it parked like narrowly.
The eagle will vouch for me. Oh man, I'll just talk to the chauffeur in the parking lot. It's like the Blues Brothers scene where it's like, I usually like to write out the check on the dashboard, and then so he's like, so he sort of looks down at the note and he says, a note could be forged or written by someone else, not you. And Asted says, and she's sort of scanning it, she says, no, I recognize this handwriting. I spoke to this Melina some before I left the camp. She seemed quiet, cautious, but there was truth in her eyes. And she sort of looks at you and says, and they did not treat her kindly either. And Thunar kind of looks back at you. Make another persuasion check. This time do it at +4.
+4, like 17.
Okay. So Thunar kind of has his eyes narrowed and then, I am built for swinging axes, not for deciding truth and falsehood. Fine. Then I will take your assistance. Be aware that there are people, my people around you, watching your every move. And if you try to betray me, I will strike you down where you stand, be you Dunedain, god, or simple lying human.
I clench my fists and I try not to roll my eyes, and I think back to Tony Bear's calming influence whenever I have to speak with people. It's all good. And I nod to him. Very well. Then, this Viglar, where does he lay? How many does he number? What can we do?
Normally, his raiding parties that he takes with him number in 4 or 5s. He travels usually somewhat outside the regular camp, and has done so more of late as boredom has set in. I think he wants more serious action, or so he claims. Of course, whenever actual danger faces him, he runs like the coward he is. Still, he is no slouch with an axe, and usually the warriors that Vigland sends with him are strong. He is Vigland's only heir. If we kill him, we kill Vigland's future. And that is an act of revenge which he will feel sorely. The problem is figuring out a way to kill him without alerting everyone else. When he travels some distance from the camp, as I said, but his followers know this forest well. They could escape back into the woods quickly if they so chose. Thus, we must both fall upon them and make sure they do not escape. So, he goes on to basically tell you that usually it's Vigland with about maybe 4 or 5 people that go with him. And he says that Thunar is sort of vague about the numbers that he commands, but he says that he can have more people that could come with him, but he doesn't want to reveal them all at once, because if he fails, he wants to make sure that there are people left over to, like, continue his revenge. So he usually only likes to take a few people with him, obviously including you, and he doesn't want Aistid anywhere near any of this, because he doesn't want her to, you know, clearly, I mean, you get the feeling that there's, for all of his grimness and sort of gruffness, that he's sort of softer when he speaks to Aistid, and you can tell that there's obviously, it doesn't take a genius to know that there must be some kind of general connection to, you know, between the two of them. Anyway, he basically says this is what they could do. He also asks you tactically whether or not this is something where you should try to find him in the forest, or whether they should be drawn out from the shelter of the trees. Because again, he sort of emphasizes how well they know the forest, but of course you, as you yourself said, Robar, know the forest also. So the question is what you want to handle, and he's willing to kind of take your suggestions about where to approach dealing with this guy, plus his, you know, 3 or 4 other people, something like that.
I think Robar, yeah, feeling comfortable in the forest and knowing, and having pulled off a couple of successful-ish ambushes in the past, and being a victim of many, knows the power of, these guys can, like, hide in the woods because they hid from Robar, you know, like, so he feels most comfortable trying to ambush Viglar while within the woods themselves, rather than drawing them out.
Okay. And he says, very well. Be aware that if this is what we do, that you are likely to be isolated. Whenever you face whoever it is, whether it be Viglar himself or one of his minions, there will be little that others can do to aid you.
I can handle myself.
And
flash cut of montage of all the times I've failed ever trying to hit someone in combat.
I can handle myself. He's like, you should know that there is also a river here. Like, oh god damn it. So he says, we will see. I do not know if you can handle yourself. Your family history might indicate otherwise, but perhaps you, as the youngest generation, have chosen a different path. We shall see. And he kind of stands up and goes off to talk to a few of his men standing at the edge of the clearing, and Aistid comes over and sort of sits next to you and says, please do not be too harsh on Thunar. He speaks roughly. He has spent no time in civilization, and speaks his mind faster sometimes than his mind can catch up with. Yet he is a good man, and he will not lead you astray.
Thank you. I say to Aistid, for what it's worth, if we come across this Oftworld, what should we do?
And she sighs, and she says, I am not... I mean, I can handle a weapon, but I am no warrior. I am skilled in swordplay, but I have no love for the blood or the fight. I would that my father had turned to his days of laughter and kindness, but he is all hard edges now. And so I find that as much as I would escape his legacy of blood, I am drawn back to it somehow. If Othbald is not dealt with, he will follow me. And I will not allow him to treat me the way he did. Again. And her eyes kind of harden, and there's a moment where those blue eyes, I said they were piercing, they just, like, steel for a moment, you know. She says, if you find him, do what you must. But just keep him from following me. However, we must make that happen.
I look her in the eyes and say, I will.
She says, thank you. I believe you. I hope you find your sister. She seemed like a good person as well. And I see something of your face in hers. I hope that she is all right when you discover her.
I am eager to meet her as well.
And she stands and nods, and then goes off to the one little tent that's in the back here. Make a Lando Calrissian check. That's true. I should totally do just a love triangle and be like, we're going to put all the rest of Middle-earth on hold, and it's going to be Robar romance time. So. The love camp. No. So Viglar comes back. Sorry, Viglar. Freudian slip. Ha-ha! It was me all along. Thunar comes back. Thunar comes back, and behind him are the three men that were behind you, although you notice there are others, kind of a few that are just sort of looking at you from just the edge of the woods. But the three that face you are these grim men, two of them with swords, all with bows, one of them with an axe, all of them with bows slung at their backs. They're not in any kind of uniform or anything like that, and they're definitely not Dunedain, but these are hardened men, and you can see that they have a similar kind of grim expression to their leader. And Viglar says, these three will accompany us as we try to find Viglar. I have heard from one of my scouts that to the northern side of the Elfwood, Viglar has spent time hunting. Before, the call that you were responding to was the call of my scouts. When they return, not having heard our reply to them, they may have more information. But my guess is that that is where we will head.
Then let us leave.
And he nods, and indeed, a few minutes later, the scouts do enter the clearing, two of them, and speak to him quietly, and then after Thunar has explained himself, they kind of nod and then disappear into the woods. And then the five of you, the three soldiers plus Thunar and yourself, head off to the north. And as you head off to the north, you see for a moment what looks like just maybe 15 men kind of coming in from the outside of the clearing, clearly where they had been standing. Like, they looked like trees. Like, I mean,
right.
they were like, I mean, just absolutely silent. And as you move, as good as your stealth was coming in, and it was awfully good, these ones look almost as if, you know, a bird hopping from bush to bush would hardly make more noise than them. They are just that quiet as they are passing through, and so you almost feel a little self-conscious, like, you know, despite, I mean, you're still doing very well, but like, this is their territory. That said, you are a Dunedain, not a normal human being, and so you are also impressively keeping quiet. But and when you get to the northern side of the Elfwood, you can see the sort of, not too far, maybe, I don't know, a few hundred feet, you can see light coming from outside. You've seen some light all above you. As I said, this is not as dense as Mirkwood, but you can also see more light coming in front of you, which suggests you're reaching the end of the clearing. And Vignar says, and why do I keep doing that? Thunar says, all right. He says, we will wait here. And he kind of nods to his men, and the men sort of fan out, basically. And he says, and now the question, Robar, will you act as bait or as noose? One of us must be here and bring him forth into the ambush when he comes. The other must be ready to strike.
I will be the bait.
And he raises an eyebrow and he says, it is more dangerous, you realize.
I'm here to prove myself, am I not?
He nods and he says, "See that you do, and that you do not betray us." And he says nothing more, but just sets his hard brown eyes staring at the, space in front of him. The space that he's looking at is not much of a clearing. I mean, it's kind of a space where there aren't too many trees, I guess. And so, how do you want to take up your position, Robar? Like, do you want to, how do you want to be like, "Come and get me"? Like, how do you want to set yourself up?
Yeah, I think he is gonna just sort of like walk out into the clearing, and he probably has his bow sort of drawn, an arrow ready, just to sort of like be as taunting and aggressive as possible.
Okay. All right. So you position yourself. A couple of minutes pass. Then I want you to make a perception check for me, please.
Oh boy. 21.
Wow. So, and a double 21 at that.
Yeah.
Really impressive. So, you hear sounds and rustling in the underbrush, and there are definitely voices coming. But one of the voices is very odd. And it sounds something like this. "The truth is, one of us should make like a tree and leaves, master. Look at me! Look at me as I scamper from tree to tree. Squirrels would not be as strong as me." And then you hear one of them saying, "Silence, Saviga. Shut your mouth." And then he says, "I will shut my mouth when my lord tells me to. In the meantime, I will look more ugly if I keep my mouth closed than open." Stupid fool. The voice sounds very much, thank you for the follow. The voice sounds completely incongruous. I mean, it's this loud, cackling something or other. And as you kind of peer into the undergrowth, you can see that they are passing, they're almost not going to quite go right in the clearing, but a little bit past it, where if you want, you could like walk up and like look out if you wanted and see. They're nearby, and it would be dangerous, like in terms of revealing yourself, but it doesn't look like they're going to run right into you at the moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm gonna try and get some eyes on those guys.
Okay. When you come, so actually I need you to make a stealth check for me, please.
17.
Okay. Multiple checks. Look at all these number checks, by the way, people. 21, 18, 16, 8, 13, 21, 17. All right. So as you sort of move up silently, and you see as you're sort of looking through, you can see passing through the undergrowth, there is a tall, grim man who has this dark hair and a twisted kind of expression. It's not clear if it's just a sneer or if it's just kind of his natural look, let us say. Behind him are two men, somewhat shorter, but looking sort of dressed similarly to him, everyone carrying axes. And in front of him, capering about and dancing and jumping up and down, is a goblin. A small green goblin that is jumping up and down and kind of sticking out his tongue and kind of, waving his arms and cackling. And every so often you can see one of the other men mutters at him and yells at him and, "Shut up, Saviga. How are we supposed to hunt with you scaring the animals from miles off?" "I will scare them into your nets, Lord, and then you will be less of an animal than they." And only the sneering man seems to say nothing to him. Occasionally, he sort of grins more than the sneer, and occasionally he kind of shakes his head. It's almost like this thing is like a jester or something for him.
Right.
But it's weird. Like there's this dude and then the two guys behind him that are clearly meant for battle, and then whatever the hell this thing is in front of him.
I call out. And like show myself fairly open. Viglar.
And he like a shot, like whips his head over to the left, and Saviga immediately stops. "Ooh!" And the two men. And he sort of looks, turns, and sees you kind of like standing there like right at the edge of this little space that you were in. And he just looks at you silently.
"What? You too coward to face me?"
"Who are you?"
Robar Staunton.
Who is that?
One of the Dunedain.
The Dunedain. One of the legends, lads. Come to teach us a lesson, eh?
That's right.
I doubt it. I don't think Dunedain would waste their time, and I don't think Dunedain would be so stupid as to reveal themselves. And he kind of draws he has his axe already, but he kind of lifts it louder, and Saviga says, Dunedain, Dunedun, is that I know, 1 to 1. And he kind of cackles and jumps around behind. And the two men sort of fan out behind him, and Viglar raises a hand and says, I'll deal with this, Dunedain. Follow me in. Make sure there's none other the cowards waiting. There could be anyone here pretending to have fun with us, lads. And they nod, and you can see them sort of fanning out as well. Now, at this point, you have to make a decision because he's kind of stepping forward. Are you gonna like back up, go forward? Like where? What are you? How are you gonna?
I'm gonna start backing up. The plan is to make sure that they're well within sort of line of sight of my backup squad, who I'm desperately hoping are close by. And so I'm going to sort of like slowly back up, looking like I'm nervous. All part of the ruse. Robar is a terrible actor, though, so that maybe it's very...
No one is back here. No one at all. There's no trap.
Just me.
Okay. All right. So let me see. Let me get this. So he moves forward with axe in hand. And then he leaps forward. I need you to make for me, please, a... Let me have you make... I'll have you make a perception check. I'll have you do it at +4. I want to see if you noticed him prepare. Yep, okay. Yeah. So you did sort of know... You were sort of waiting for this. And as he kind of leaps forward, you neatly pivot out of the way. He kind of stumbles a little bit into the clearing and then turns and growls at you and says, Now... we will end this false legend of yours. Come meet the end of your delusions at my axe. And now I would like initiative as we pull up some music and see what we've got here.
Oh, these are all
right.
Robar is lightning fast.
Super speedy. Give me that music here. No, not chase. How about give me that. Give me some death and axes. Maybe. Come on, music. There we go. That's what I'm talking about.
Lots of bumpers.
Yeah, is that cool? Too loud, or is it alright?
That's good. Yeah, no, I can control it on mine.
All right. Good. All right. All right. So we've got here. Okay. Okay. And you got a 17. You yell Wakanda forever. Yeah, no, not quite the same thing. Okay. All right. So Ultimate Bongo Championship, that's true. Okay.
The bongo off.
And we'll have okay. All right, so you are first to act, Robar. You see him, so again, he sort of stumbled past you, then picked up his axe and is now facing you. You can see that he's actually got what looks like more than just a tunic. It's actually a corselet of mail, and he pulls out a shield from his back. So he's basically got the axe and the shield as you're looking at him, and he looks to be a good axeman. You also can tell that his eyes look a little red, and you almost wonder if you might have sensed a bit of alcohol as he staggered past you. He might be a little drunk too. Think the best of redneck hunting, you know. Maybe.
Is this my turn?
It is your turn.
I'm sorry. Okay, cool.
Yeah, you're up first.
How far away is he from me right now?
Less than 10 feet.
I have my bow out, so I'll take a shot.
Okay. He just stumbles past you. Pew! Okay.
Sword.
Go ahead and fire at him then.
18.
18 will hit.
12 points of damage.
Damn! Wow. That's a good way to lead off.
Yeah.
Like it just. So he kind of staggers back. And you're just sort of, as you see kind of his reaction, he kind of looks at you. And then comes forward, and he just basically charges at you, wildly swinging his axe. Like, it's powerful, but nuts. Like, he's completely exposing himself, but it is powerful. What this means mechanically is that he's going to get advantage on these attacks, but he is going to get advantage against him in the next round because he's completely exposing himself. So let's see. So we have let's see, a 20.
Oof, that'll do it.
Not a natural, but and actually,
20.
and he hits twice, 20 and 20, two 20s, but neither natural.
Ow. Instant regret.
Instant regret.
Robar remembers every couple of months why he doesn't fight people.
Okay. That is going to do, let's see, 13 points of damage with those two strikes. And then he says, "Not so smug now, are you, Bowman?" And behind him, Saviga is still capering around. "One shot to the heart, one shot to the head. Soon you're gone, and soon he'll be dead." As he's in the background.
I'm not the only Bowman.
And he's like, "I thought Dunedain were harder to kill." Okay, now, before we go back to the top of the round, I'll mention that you also now hear disruption behind you, as if people are also dealing with the other men. So, like, it sounds like your compatriots are dealing with everybody else. Now it is back up to your turn. He's now on top of you almost. So, again, you'll get advantage against him, but also he's in melee range, so a bow is not going to be as easy here, unless you jump out of the way, so...
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to draw my longsword, casting a bow down on the ground for a moment, and slash at him.
Okay.
23 to hit.
Definitely hit.
For 7 points of damage.
Okay. So that strikes him. You've definitely put the fear of Dunedain into him, so to speak. You've hit him quite a bit, but he still looks like he's not close to death yet.
So so my attacks made against servants of the enemy, including evil men. So I'm not sure if he would count.
Absolutely is an evil man, no doubt.
Then
in fact, I'm looking right at it right here. Evil men, straight up.
So actually, an extra 2 points of damage for 9 total on that attack.
Would that have been the case on the other attack also?
It would have been the case on the other attack as well, yeah.
So that would be another 2? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so that you definitely have like hit him quite a bit. You see a lot of blood. Still though, he's kind of he's still kind of holding himself together. Okay. And as he sort of stares at you, he grabs a flask from his side and kind of pours some of it over his wounds, like just wincing, and then drinks the rest, and then throws the flask aside and says, now we'll see what things are like." And he strides forward. Now this time he does not make a reckless attack. He has his shield in front of him, and he is going to get here. Okay, let's see. That's a 15.
15 is also gonna do it.
Okay, and he's gonna do... That's 5 points of damage on that one.
Okay.
And again, Saviga's sort of like jumping around, laughing. "Drink and death, death and drink, before you to the ground will sink." And again, sort of cackling wildly. He seems to, Viglar seems to kind of occasionally grin as he hears Saviga's jokes. These jokes are not that great, frankly, but like he seems to be really find them amusing for whatever reason. Okay, and you hear again now the sound of definite blades and like, clashing and stuff like that coming from behind you. So it sounds like, again, his men are being dealt with or they're dealing with your people. Okay, back up to the top.
All right, it's another slash with the longsword. As I'm gonna try and twist away his great axe to plunge it into his sternum, and a 21.
Damn. Yep, that'll hit.
For a total of 7 points of damage.
7
So I
points
sort
of
of
damage.
turn away the blade and run it through him.
Okay. So you can see that these wounds are like definitely, I mean, like he's looking worse and worse. But every time he does it, you do this, he sort of has this weird combination of anger and then a grin, like sort of is like enjoying being cut up somehow, and is kind of like, it's about time I felt some pain.
Where is my sister?
Your sister. And he stops for a minute and says, is that who we have in the camp? She's beautiful, you know. Truly, truly beautiful. She is a little spitfire, that one. She decided she would not be interested in any of my attentions. I, so far, have avoided going closer. I try to be gentle, you know. But fear not. Now that I know you are related to her, I will treat her with extra care.
I will grant you no such courtesy. And I...
You'll pay for this, you son of a bitch. Okay. He jumps forward, and again with his shield forward. Now this time, he swings his shield at you, like at your face. Ooh. He's rolling well too. 21 is going to hit you, I think. So the good news is it's only going to do 2 points of damage. The bad news is I need you to make a Constitution saving throw, because he basically just bashed you in the face, and I want to see if you're stunned from it.
Oh dear. 11.
Let me see. Yeah, no. So what that means is that you're going to fall back. Now, what stunning is going to mean in this context is that it means that you're going to be able to... You're not going to be able to take an offensive action, but you can try to defend yourself in one of multiple ways. You can try to kind of... This is just for a 1 round. You can
Like
sort of fall to the ground. You can, play dead. You can... I mean, you come something else you want to tell me. Pitch me an idea, but you're going to have to try to defend yourself against whatever attack he's going to bring against you next.
Okay. Then
this is the Uruk that hits Aragorn with the whole thing where he like, slams you and you're like, before. Yeah, exactly.
Robot sort of like falls back, but he falls with it, if that makes sense. He sort of goes with the roll to try and get some distance, and I guess I'll take the dodge action.
Okay.
To give him disadvantage on the attack, yeah.
All right, let's see what happens. Oh, hell yeah. It's a good thing you did, because the 21 would have been bad, but I think the 6 is going to be okay.
That's going to be fine, yeah.
So he kind of does that. So literally, like, brings the axe down. You roll out of the way. Stinky, like, impacts the ground. And turns around. A miss for now, a hit for soon. One time later, you'll meet your doom. And he kind of pulls the axe back and growls at you, sort of ferally almost. Now you've recovered your wits, Robar.
Yeah, I do a super, I guess I sort of like roll forwards again and sort of like up thrust with the sword to try and break through his defense unexpectedly. And that's 20.
Wow! God damn! It's like, all right, so you just lean forward. Wow! All right, max damage.
14 points of damage as 16 points of damage, in fact, as I roll forwards and just try to like double-handed thrust up into the belly.
So he's not dead, but he's really in bad shape now. Like he kind of is like, and kind of staggers back. And Saviga, who is in the middle of some awesome rhyme, soon you'll find that, as he sees that, like, that didn't work out the way that he planned, and he kind of pulls away, and now he drops his shield and holds the axe with both hands, and just comes in just swinging wildly at you, like, just, like, both, like, crazy. Let's see. That is going to be a 14 and a 12.
The 14 is going to hit, the 12 isn't.
Okay. 14. That's 10 points of damage. He impacts you with just, like, right into your, like, torso, type of thing. And Saviga starts laughing again. Hit with the axe, soon to be dead. I'll take over your spot instead. Give me your sword. I'll feel so good. You won't know what happened in this neighborhood. He continues to do this. You hear also what sounds like a death cry from behind you. You have no idea who it was, but someone just died.
Someone died, yeah.
Yep. Okay, you are up. So now that was a reckless attack that he did again. So he is again exposed to you. And again, his shield is gone because he's just like, you mother, type of thing. Yeah. He's just a sight of blood, basically.
Ooh, okay. Let's see what move Robar goes for. Yeah, he's no shield. Robar's like two-handing the longsword now. And he's just gonna like hack to try and just cut him down.
Okay.
Because Robar is also bloodied as well, so they're sort of like, woozily sort of launching themselves towards one another.
Yep.
It's an 18.
Yeah, that'll hit. For
12 points of damage.
God damn. He practically pulls the blade into him. Okay, so he looks like he's like right on the edge of death. Like you like a stiff breeze would basically knock him over, and he's like, and he sort of swings at you. So go ahead, Todd. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, he's just growling, not even expecting an answer. I don't think at this point, just sort of shouting, "Where is she?"
And he's like, yeah, she's in the ground like all of you filth, and swings at you. 12?
No.
Just misses you, and like you kind of duck out of the way. Saviga now has fallen silent, and you have a chance to get in your attack. This is a regular attack. He was not reckless there.
Okay. So he's
like right.
Yeah, he's like, if he's like sort of on his knees or like, belly standing, he's just gonna stand over him and try and slice off his head.
Damn. All right.
It's the Aragorn's last thrust into Lurtz.
Yep.
As he, the head comes.
Let's make it happen.
Oh, that's a 12.
You'll be happy to know that because he is exposed as he is, the 12 is going to hit. Normally it wouldn't have, but getting rid of the shield and doing all that made it possible. All right, go ahead and do your damage.
5 points of damage.
That's enough. So you just like, head goes flying off, and Saviga's like, ah! And sort of jumps to the left as the head goes there, and sort of Saviga takes a couple of faltering steps back, and then books it like out of the clearing. And you hear sort of screaming and shouting coming from behind you.
I see as the creature runs away, and grab up my bow and barely be able to pick myself up still with the amount of wounds that I have. Take the bow and set after the goblin. I will let you get a shot off at him if you want. You're going to be doing it at a -2 because you're shooting at him through the branches, but he kind of stumbled backwards. So you can get a shot before you go running after him if you want. What's up, Kerflop? No, that's a miss.
No, that's going to miss, yeah. So that goes sailing off. So he, now the question is, I just want to make sure, so you're going to run after him.
They said no witnesses because if they get if someone comes back to the camp, so I'm gonna have to hope that those guys are going okay and just try and kill the goblin.
So how we're gonna do this is I'm gonna have you make we're each going to make checks against dexterity, and we're gonna see, actually I take that back, athletics or acrobatics basically, and he's going to do the same, and we're going to see whether or not he is able to change up, whether he's able to maintain his lead over you basically is what we're going to do. What's up also, Nonstop and Kerflop, good to see you. So yes,
athletics, acrobatics is better. 12.
All right, let's see how he does. It's better than a 12, I think. I accidentally turned off my book. I turned the power off on my book. I accidentally closed the book is what we call that in English. All right. So yeah, it's actually not a lot better than that roll, but it's somewhat better. He extends a little further ahead. Now, in each of these cases, what I'll say is, every time that he gets a bigger lead on you, you will have a bigger minus to hit him. Every time you lessen the lead, you will have less of a minus to hit him. But every time you stop to take a shot, you guarantee that he will build the lead the next time. So in other words, if you stop now, you will be and take a shot and miss, then you will build his lead. So it's up to you to decide. Right now you're at a -3 because of his current lead on you.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and take a shot.
Okay.
Because I'm bad at everything else. Yikes.
Oh man, see?
Miss.
Yep, misses. And he's not making any jokes now, but he's definitely running forward. Okay, so he's now got a lead of 4 as we move into this round. Okay, so make those checks again.
Okay.
You see him kind of stumble in front of you. Yeah. So now you cut the lead back down. Now it's back down to 3. Also, by the way, this is time limited, so at some point he's going to reach wherever he's going. So you'll need to think about that too. At the moment, though, you are down to a 3 lead again. So keep running or take a shot at him. You'd be taking the shot at the same minus you had last round.
Yeah, I'm going to try and take the shot.
Okay.
21.
Yes, that will hit. Let's see what damage you do.
Just the 11. In fact, 13 with the enemy.
So he sort of ducks right and left and right in the head. Forward and just face plants. And there is silence, although behind you in the distance you can hear rustling.
Do I definitely think he's dead?
Well, I don't know of too many goblins that are going to get up from an arrow through the head.
Okay,
it's possible, but no, that was a very good hit.
Okay.
You can now. I mean, now to be fair, you haven't gone forward and looked at him, so you could still do that. But that is what you're gonna have to think about.
Yeah. No. In that case, I'm gonna, assuming that he's dead or as close to dead as you're gonna get with a goblin, he's gonna look over his shoulder and start heading back to see if he can assist Astid and Funa.
Okay. When you get back, it takes you about probably 3-4 minutes to get back to where you were, and you see that Thunar has indeed been victorious, but not without cost. There are Vignar's dead, Lar's dead men. Men are lying dead on the ground, but so too are 2 of Thunar's companions. So there's now just 1 plus you and him. As he as you walk into the clearing, he looks up at you and says, "So." And you can see he's taken some wounds too, like he's not uninjured, and he says, "It seems that you both bleed and cause blood, in the way you said. Viglar, then, what of him?"
Dead.
And
I'll go over to where his head is rolling on the floor, and hold it up to him.
And he sort of looks at it. And he kind of takes it by the hair from you and looks at it and says, "As ugly in death as he was in life." And then he sort of stares at it, then throws it to the ground and spits and says, "Good. It cost us something." And he looks down at his dead men and says, "And ourselves. But good. There is some measure of justice then." And he puts his hand up and and you can see that he has this terrible cut along his left arm. So he kind of just weakly puts it on your shoulder. And you're kind of like, ow, because, you're also filled with wounds. And he says, "All right, I'm convinced. You've proven yourself. We need to rescue your sister."
My sister, yes.
"But she's in the camp, and there are so few of us now. I wanted to attack the camp before, but in this state, how should we proceed?" Kind of breathing heavily.
Yeah, so has Robot. He's on 10 HP.
Yep.
Agreed. We have no hope of taking them directly, but perhaps these dead men here, they're wearing no uniforms, but they seem as though they are villainous men. Their outfits, at least, may disguise us for a time, for us to sneak into the camp, free my sister. This villain," and I kick the body of Vigla, "told me that she's indeed still alive and within the camp. Not far from wherever it was Viglar's tent is, perhaps you know that. And we can make our way in and out."
He nods and he says, "It has been some time since I've been in that camp. Well over a year, and so they may have changed things. I did not see this person that you speak of. Aested had seen her and described her for me. But it seems likely that Viglar would have wanted her close to him, and presumably so would his father. Perhaps further heirs would have been in the offing, whether intentional or not. And he shakes his head. He says, but we will find what we can. However, I don't know that either you or I are in any state to maneuver here. Have you any method of healing? I don't know if you've got any of these, like, healing. Also, did you say 10? Because I think I had you at 6. You're at 10?
I had... Yeah, unless I was tracking wrong.
Were you starting with 35?
5, and then I was... Oh, goodness, I don't even know how many I lost now. I have myself down to 10, but you may be right.
Yeah, I think you're at 6, actually, because I think that last one had you down, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
No worries.
But anyway, so I don't know if you have any, like, any one of Tani's twice baked cakes or whatever, or any of those.
It's possible that I'd be carrying one, but at the very least I can short rest and spend hit dice that way.
Which I think is what they probably would suggest that you do. So why don't you go ahead and do that? He's going to also tend to his wounds with bandages and so forth.
Okay, 16, 18.
Okay.
Cool.
So you're up to 18. Yep. Because as he points out to you, if you get into combat against the camp, it's not going to matter how healthy you are.
Yeah.
You know, so. Okay.
So 16 plus 18. Oh, sorry. 6 plus 18 is maths. 24?
Yes, 24.
24. Cool. Yeah, so after a little rest, Robar's really not keen to rest for too long.
Right.
Shall we go?
And he nods, and he's he's kind of cleaned himself up a little bit, if you can call taking a water skin and dumping it over him, and kind of like, he has this foul-smelling herb of some kind that he's been kind of, essentially smearing into his wounds, and he kind of winces a little bit as he does it, but you can see that the blood sort of slows from these wounds. I mean, he took a lot of these bad cuts, and his men on the ground took more of them, obviously. The one that's remaining, his one compatriot, is relatively unscathed, and sort of helps Thunar in doing this. And when they're done, he sort of stands and says, all right, the camp is this way, closer to the eaves of northern Mirkwood. He has a longhouse there, a place that looks something like the home of what I'm told Bjorn looks like, if you've ever been to that place. But of course it is more rough and crude, and has with it many tents in the area. But you'll be able to find it, unless he's moved it by now, but I think not from what my scouts say.
I nod. Does Viglar have a particular, like, helmet or anything that he would, like, obviously would distinguish him?
Yes. He has a helmet for sure, and he also has that axe, which you can see is like, as you sort of, assuming you do pick it up, it's got this big notch in one side of it, and it's stained with blood, and it's heavy. Like, you don't really know how he actually even used it in combat, but you know why it hurts so much, because like when it hit you, he was no joking around with the damage. So that axe is odd to you. It looks like it's been kind of specially wrapped. Maybe he did his own wrapping. So the axe looks more distinctive. He does have a helmet, but it looks like just kind of like a, normal helmet, basically.
Right. So, yeah, I take an eye at the axe, pick it up, place on the helmet, and sort of try and put together a little bit of a disguise for myself, and say, right, well, in case we're caught, perhaps this should buy us some time.
And Thunar sort of looks as he's kind of dressing in the clothes of one of the others, and looks sort of serviceable. As he looks at you, he says, "Don't take this the wrong way, Robar, but you look too good for that outfit. I'm not sure how long it'll last."
That's fine. We only need a moment. You're a man of stealthy. Perhaps we can sneak our way through.
He nods, and he calls to one of the men that he calls Janist, and he says, off to the side there. If you go to the northern side of the camp, and then you can, and he kind of dies off. You can tell he's like murmuring commands to him. And Janist nods and then vanishes silently into the woods. And Thunar turns to you and says, Janist is going to go to the northern side of the camp and try to make a distraction. At my signal, that is. Hopefully, we'll be able to find your sister and get out when that distraction is made. But first, we've got to find her in the camp, and that will be no easy feat. Viglar keeps his tent, if it's anything like the way it used to be, close to his father's and more towards the center of the camp. That means we'll be exposed for a while as we walk into the camp.
Very well. Then, let us see what we can do. Thank you.
He nods and he sort of, again, puts his hand on your shoulder. Luck to both of us then. And turns and kind of, walks forward. You follow him for a while. Now, the question is, Robar, when you get to the camp itself, I'm going to describe the camp and then I'm going to ask you how you want to approach this. So, the camp itself is probably about, let me mark it here on the map. Camp is probably about here. So, it's actually through the Elfwood, and it is pretty near not only this, but the path. In fact, when you left many, many months ago now, actually a couple of years ago in game terms, when you were leaving Mirkwood, you left by this forest gate, and so you actually passed probably a few thousand feet from where the camp actually, was. Right. And the thing that's troubling is the fact that the elves should know everything about Mirkwood. And if this were anything like the olden days, you doubt very much that the elves would have allowed such a foreign presence in their land. But again, the Elven King has pulled his people back, and so it's possible that they haven't come out this far, basically. But as you look at the edge of the camp, you can see that there is this sort of rough-cut clearing. There's a bunch of like stumps and logs. There are a number of tents surrounding the area, and then one crude wooden longhouse that you can see towards the back. There are a couple of larger tents, and in the center of the camp is what looks like someone who's kind of draped to what essentially looks like a crossed set of logs. So you've got a log this way and a log crossways, and then is sort of draped with hands and arms up. It's a figure that looks thinner and is cloaked, and you can't really make out the features or anything from this distance, but you can definitely see that the person is just hanging there. And that's towards the back, not far from the bigger tents and from the longhouse. The thing I want to point out, though, is that there are many, many men talking to each other and speaking and crisscrossing over here. Many more than Valter's men, probably 4 times that size. There's a good maybe 150 or 200 of these bandits here, if they are that. And they look to be of sterner stuff. I mean, clearly, right. Now you were dealing with Viglar, who was Vigland's son, but still, these are grim fighting men who, like, pack a punch, and they clearly don't joke around. This is a dangerous force that you're looking at that could pose a threat to the Bjornings or others down the line. And as you're sort of staring at this, Thunar whispers, "There was a time where Vigland would have gotten nowhere with this, would have found no one to rally to his cause. But over the last few years, there has been something that has brought these men together. I have heard of other cases down to the south. You fought and killed one yourself in Valter. Something is wrong. These men do not fight together for common purpose, unless something else is uniting them. And Vigland, for all of his cleverness, does not have the power to do that."
I have spoken with the wizard, Radagast. He too senses a disturbance, an evil, which draws itself upon these men and these lands. But more to the point, we must find my sister and get out of here alive. No heroics.
He nods, he says, "I agree. But there will be a time when Vigland will get his. Still, at At the moment, we must worry about your sister. I am almost certain that must be her. And he points to the figure on the cross. Usually his way is to leave them there, beaten, starving, desperate for water, and gives them simply enough to survive while he gets whatever he wants from them. If what you tell me of Viglar is true, then it is possible Viglin did not want to damage her more than normal. But we will not know till we get there. Do you know your sister well?
I do not. But if she's anything like me, she'll be able to handle herself. No matter how long she's been up there. Hope that at least that she can walk.
He shrugs and says, I hope so. We won't get a chance to carry her out if you're wrong. And he looks, and you can see that there's, so as I said, there's like men everywhere. Now, there are a couple of options. One, you have a lot of tents that are around here. Many of them around the circle, but there are a bunch of them leading up to a somewhat smaller open space in the middle of which is this cross. So you could theoretically try to duck from tent to tent. That's one option. A second option would be to just, stride forward or whatever and like through the camp, and obviously you're going to attract attention and presumably challenge. Or if you have a third sort of way that I'm not thinking about, or other ways, lay them on me. But the obvious ones that you see are the ones I just laid out.
I think the best way for them to go is to pretend like everything is fine. And like to no one looks at you if you walk into a room like you belong there, that kind of deal. So thin disguise though it may be, I think just brazenly walk in, because if we fail one stealth roll, then everyone's going to start immediately killing us. Whereas at least with the disguise, Robar's thinking that maybe there's a chance to talk ourselves out of a situation.
Okay, seems logical. All right, so then you relay this to Thunar, and he says, what happens if they recognize me?
It's been a year.
And he kind of like raises an eyebrow like,
You could shave.
He says, I don't think that will work. And you can see he's got like stubble and like his thick beard. He's like, what? He says, I'm willing to do your plan, but, and then he kind of says, wait. If we get caught, I know what to do. You simply follow my lead, all right?
Okay.
All right, and he gets up and he gets up and looks at you, and then steps out and begins walking down. There's just a slight little rise before you get to the the camp itself. I should ask, how are you walking next to him? At a distance, from behind him, right next to him, holding him by the shoulders? Like, how are you doing this?
I guess next to him. Okay. Yeah.
So you walk next to him and proceed inwards. Now, the first couple of sort of groups that you pass don't seem to pay a lot of attention. By the time you get to about midway through, you notice a few that have sort of noticed you, because you're kind of moving relatively purposefully towards the center. Right. And then one of them is like, you see one group sort of whispering to each other, and they walk forward and stand in front as sort of blocking your path and say, halt! Who are you? And then they see Thunar, and their eyes kind of widen. They're like, it's Thunar! And Thunar kind of pushes, like shoves you almost. He kind of pushes at you and is like, that's right, I'm Thunar. All of you maggots should die in the filth you are. And he's clearly shoving you, but not shoving you so hard that you get pushed away.
I say suddenly, yeah, that's right. I found this one out here in the woods. Figured I'd bring him back for some fun.
And you're kind of pushing him, and they kind of stop and they say, really? And who are you? I'm a mute suddenly, and
my name is Ragvold. Don't you remember me?
they look at each other kind of confused, like, do you know a Ragvold? There are a lot of people in the camp. They're like, Ragvold?
There could be a Ragvold.
There might be. Make a deception check for me, please. And before you do it, Chad, I just want to remind everyone that there are inspirations that are possible. Your boy Robar is about to try to convince people that he has gotten Thunar, and that as he's trying to rescue his sisters. Just think a little bit about that. Inspirations exist. So again, the way that you inspire, for those of you who don't know how, is some people have inspirations already. If you support the Patreon at the $10 level, you get an inspiration you can use on one of my campaigns per month. Or if you support by subbing to the tier 2 level or above, you get an inspiration as well. So either of those will allow you to get an inspiration. So do we have anyone who wishes to inspire Mr. Robar Staunton before he engages in this maneuver? And I'll give people just a couple seconds. While I'm doing that, by the way, this is a good moment to let everyone know that we are playing Day 37 of Adventures in Middle-earth, Wilderland Adventures, sponsored by Cubicle 7. This is A Darkness in the Marshes, and this is basically explaining, describing what happened when Robar went off to find news of his sister. Next Tuesday, if Robar survives this, he will be returning to join the rest of his group. Hey, there's Nonstop with the inspiration of Robar. Nonstop is always there waiting for that. Thanks, dude. Nonstop has inspired you, sir. You are inspired.
I feel it. Let everyone down. Let everyone.
Oh, no. Well, it would have been even worse. Okay. So you do the deception. It would have been a 2. Let's see. At a 7, they're like, and one of them looks at each other like, I don't know any Ragvold. You're going to have to come with me. Talk to Vigland about it. And they sort of, one of them grabs Thunar and stumbles forward, and like Thunar's like, gives you this look of like as you're sort of, as he's beginning to be pulled away from you.
I say, you know the rules. You think the boss is going to be happy if you take away my trophy? Robust.
He stops and kind of looks back and he says,
If you want to risk angering the boss, that's up to you.
Make another deception check. Do this one a +4.
Okay. 22.
Wow, without a net this time. All right. He kind of he sort of says, all right, fine. What are you doing with him then? He kind of shoves him back at you.
I grab him and I say, I'm taking him to the tents. See how, let him rot for a little while before I talk to the boss.
And they say, he says, all right, make sure you don't take too long. There's some of the rest of us who'd like to have our fun with Thunar here. And kind of one of them sort of like looks at him and kind of gives him the forearm shiver, like in his, he kind of is like spits and everything, but he doesn't, you know, he doesn't flip out. And you kind of pull him along. And as you're going, Thunar whispers, that was a close thing.
You're telling me.
You can feel their eyes on you as you go, but they do not hinder your progress. You get to the center, and you get to basically the area. Now you have to make a decision. So you get to the place where if you walk any further, you'll be at the cross. And behind it are the kind of the longhouse, and then you got the big tents to the left and the right. Presumably one of them belonging to Viglar. So the question is, what do you want to, like, where do you want to go? Because now, oh, and I should say, by the way, now that you're close, you can see that there is indeed this dark-haired woman in a cloak. Her cloak is her hood is thrown back, and you can see her just sort of hanging limply there. She seems to be unconscious or barely conscious. She is breathing. Her face is badly bruised. Her face, there's cuts. But Robar, as you look at her, you feel two things. One, you feel as if you were looking into a little bit of a mirror. She seems very much like yourself in a lot of ways. Just her expression, even the color of her eyes is the same. And then the other thing is that you are somewhat reminded in an odd way of the ghost that you saw at the top of the horn of at Mountain Hall, the horn of summoning. You may remember that the eagle had told you that there was some connection, he thought, between that ghost and between your sister, although it was impossible to tell why. But you're just sort of reminded of that briefly. But this is either your sister or someone who looks awfully close to what you would expect. So
I take Funar off so we can like hide behind a tent quietly for a moment.
Okay.
And say, that's her. How the hell are we going to get her out of here?
And he says, that's a good question. Once we come out of this tent, those lads that you told off back there are going to be looking for you. They're going to know that she's there. I could, of course, do the distraction we've been talking about. That'll only buy us a couple of minutes, though, and it might not work the way we want. I don't know. If Viglin comes running out of his house to see what's going on, he might see us as we try to untie her. But that is one chance, the chance we have to distract and escape.
I think you're right. I think the distraction's the only way we can make this work.
All right. Where do you want to put me? I can position myself anywhere, trigger the attack, and then come from there. It's up to you if there's what you want to do after that.
Somewhere off in the camp. Somewhere where you won't get slaughtered immediately.
Aye, but they won't let me go by myself. I'll have to see if I can get behind these tents, maybe.
Aye. I'll come with you.
And so he kind of goes off a little bit behind one of the tents with him. And then there's a spot basically behind where you can see there's a couple of men maybe sort of looking off, but not really, and certainly way less than, far fewer than what you would have had inside the circle. And he says, all right, I'll try to get past these ones as best I can. Give me a couple of minutes. You'll know when the distraction happens.
Okay. Best of luck to you, Funa.
Same. And, hope that your sister's made of the same stuff you are. And he kind of claps you on the shoulder and then moves off. Okay, now, where are you positioning yourself now while you're waiting for this? Because you sort of watch until he disappears behind one of the tents. So
yeah, I'm gonna get close as I feel comfortable as getting to my sister.
Okay. You are able to sort of get to the point where if she were awake, and again, it's not clear if she is, she might be able to hear you. That's about as close as you can get.
Okay, I'll say, psst, Alina.
And she kind of like, at first she doesn't say anything.
Alina, it's me, Robar.
What? And kind of like tilts her head a little bit. So you see her lips are kind of, you're to the side of her right now, so you can just see like her lips are cracked and bloodied, and her voice is hoarse from presumably thirst and being parched. Robar.
It's me.
My brother.
Yes, stay quiet. We're here to rescue you.
Okay. Is it just you?
It's one of her. We're about to make the distraction.
And she kind of nods and says, what should I do?
When it happens, follow me and don't stop running. We have to get to the eagle.
And she says, the eagles got message. My message.
Yes.
And she nods and see like what might be a smile if her face weren't so bruised. And she says, I can't do anything about these damned ropes, though. And you can see that she's got ropes basically tying her wrists to the cross that she's hanging on. They're not like, but they're around her wrists. So
yeah. I'll cut you down.
And she nods. She says, all right. It'll be hard to not attract attention.
We just have to do the best we can.
And she says, I'm glad you came. For me.
Of course. Now let's just focus on getting you out of here alive.
And she nods. And at that moment, you hear this. And from the other side. And then you hear this shriek, and one of the tents goes up in fire. And you don't know what just hit it, but clearly it was something that was like some kind of explosive device of some kind, right. some pitch thing that like moves really quickly. And the tent goes up, and you hear this sort of shrieking and yelling, screaming. There's the sound of weapons being drawn, and bells going off, and all that kind of stuff. And people are running out of tents everywhere, including the tent that you were standing next to, like not far from. A couple of people sort of run out. They kind of glance in your direction for a moment, but then they hear more shouting, and they kind of run off in that direction. So everyone is like running off towards where the tent is on fire.
Okay, as soon as that happens, run. In fact, not run. It's like a quick walk over to Melina, draw out a dagger, cut her down, and try and like power walk out.
Okay. Now, when you pull out the dagger, these are thick ropes. So what I'm going to need you to do here is I'm going to need you to make a strength check for me, please, to see how fast you can get through these ropes.
Okay.
And athletics will do too if you want to do that. If you can do that.
Balls.
So you're sawing away. It's working, but it's slower than you might hope. And you're like, like saw.
Right.
As you're trying to get in, she's like, you've got to hurry.
I'm working on it.
Make another athletics check for me.
Come on. No.
Wow. So you continue to saw away, and she's like, did you bring a dagger or a butter knife? As you're there. As you hear this sort of sound of, what's going on over there? Not directed at you, but clearly directed off of the side of the camp. And as you look over, you see this very tall, stern, gray-bearded man. He's got this gray beard, a braid down by his chin. His hair, his gray hair, is up in a bun. His muscles are, despite what is clearly his age, he has knotted muscles. And he looks very much actually like Viglar himself. And he strides forward. He has got this, what looks like some kind of animal pelt or skin over this chainmail armor that he's wearing. And he has this enormous shield, like this like tower shield practically. And he strides forward and he's like, what's going on over there? And someone comes over and sort of bows. Vigland, there's one of the tents is on fire. I've never seen anything like it. Get it put out and search the camp. This is a distraction technique. And he begins to sort of head off behind him. And Melina says, hurry up with that knife. Okay, go ahead, one more athletics check. That's all right, actually. It took 3 of them, but you finally get through it, and she almost slumps to the ground. She's like, and she kind of puts an arm over you, and she kind of half stands up. Actually, given what she looks like, it's amazing she's not just on the ground lying there, but she's got some strength clearly left over. And she says, all right, let's get going.
Okay.
All right. And now you're doing this power walk thing, you said?
It's the try not to be obvious at running away because then we'll get killed, but let's swiftly move kind of deal.
So you begin to move towards the edge of the clearing. Now, I have a question for you. Have you ever, and I know that you've got not long before you have to get going also, got that, but have you ever seen the Bourne Identity?
I sure have, yeah.
Okay. Do you remember the sequence where he's in the embassy and he's walking away and the guy's like, right there, red bag, right there, right there. That's exactly, so this guy basically, someone says, you, what are you doing? And you look around and you see Vigland staring at you, kind of glaring with these gray eyes, sort of pointing with, and he actually has... let me double check what his weapon is. Yeah, his axe. So he's got this axe, even larger than Viglar's, and he's got it sort of pointing at you.
shrug and run.
Okay. Stagger forward, and he says, "Them! Get them!" And so now as he says that, this arrow shoots past your head, and it's flaming arrow. You actually smell sulfur as it passes by you, and then hits the ground behind you, and you hear it hits the ground and immediately spreads. So there's fire now in the camp, and Vigland, who was sort of stepping forward, steps back and, "Find who shot that, you fools!" And you see that there are, sort of people like, again, there's just chaos, like people sort of running towards you. There's people now worried about the fire. And as you're sort of running forward and moving, you continue to...
Is it okay if the rock guy
Comes in here? Yeah, if he has to. That's fine. I'll be done in about 10 minutes anyway. He forges forward, and as he's sort of walking forward, this arrow just sort of shoots there. Just sort of shoots there and lands on the ground, and he sort of steps back and points at you, and as you're walking forward, you get an image of someone just literally walking past you quickly, as quickly as you're walking the other way, as you're running the other way, and says, as you walk past, you get a sight of Thunar, and Thunar says, "Make sure you take care of her. And Asted. Take care of them both." And then Thunar goes running towards this camp. And you see, like, there's fire and, like, just brush as he's running towards him. And you see... Whoops, as my camera falls. And you see Thunar running towards him as Vigland stands up with his axe and just brings it down just as you head into sort of out of the clearing. Now, what I'm going to need you to do as you're sort of running away here is you're going to do the same thing that we just did, but it's got to be in reverse. So you're going to be making a couple of these athletics checks to see whether you can escape what's happening here. So.
Okay. I'm gonna die.
Unfortunately, they didn't roll well that time either. You have a lead of about 2. So now, in each case, you have these ones that are running after you. You have a couple of choices. You have to basically maintain this lead for another 4 rounds or so. So the question is, in each of these cases, there's people behind you. You can try to fire a shot at them to slow them down, and if you hit, you will slow them down. If you miss, though, they will get their lead, they will be closer to you. So right now you have a lead that's actually increased slightly because they rolled worse than you. So you actually have a lead of about 3, and you have 4 rounds here. So the question is, what do you want to do? Do you want to take a chance and try to slow them down, or keep going and, like, Chat's version seems to be run the hell away.
Yeah, I'm gonna run, but I am gonna turn back and shoot them every now and again, at least to try and slow them down.
Okay, so you're gonna keep running. I'll just remind me of that when we get to that round. So, yeah. Okay, so second round.
17.
Okay, this time, believe it or not, they rolled better. So they rolled really well and really bad last time. So that means that they actually make the lead shorter. It's about 2. You have 3 rounds to go. You've got a lead of 2. Shoot or run?
Shoot.
Okay.
18.
Yes, that's going to be a hit. The damage actually doesn't matter in this case. It means that your lead is going to increase again back up to 3. So, okay, next round.
Run, Melina.
It's like, just run. Don't
just go. 10.
They rolled better than that. So that's a 2. You've got 2 rounds left and a 2 lead.
Time to shoot.
Okay.
13.
13 will just hit. So you're up to a 3 lead. Okay, next round.
Get out of here.
They're rolling really well. I guess they're really angry.
12.
All right, they're down to a 2 lead, 1 round to go.
Shoot. Oh.
All right, 1 lead, 1 round lead, 1 round to go. Here we go.
I'm just throwing her away and trying to run.
Yep.
15.
Okay. So that's wow. That is just enough. You get past them to the other side. So you basically push forward and come into the clearing. And what happens is the ones that are chasing you, you sort of stumble out of the Elfwood, and the ones that are chasing you stumble forward and then sort of cry in horror because as you look up, you see eagles descending upon them from above, like basically just a bunch of the eagles, including the eagle that brought you at its head, just coming down. Crawl! all like over them, sweeping at them with wings. They sort of they kind of swing their axes, but completely ineffectually. Meanwhile, more of Thunar's men come in, and you hear these horrible shrieks as Thunar's men just cut down the people that they've seen. And after a moment, the ones that are there are either dead or fleeing back into the forest. And you are now standing outside with Melina, who's just kind of collapsed on the ground, pretty much. And you're not much better, I would say. You're like, as you're kind of standing there, and Astid comes up to you. You see her there, and she comes up and says, "You've made it, my friend. You've made it. I think the cost was high, but you've struck a blow against them. Maybe that will be enough, at least for now."
I couldn't stop him.
She says, "Where is Thunar then?"
He is fighting Vigland. I didn't get to see what happened.
And her eyes kind of widen, and she looks back at the Elfwood and then back at you. She's still silent.
He told me to look after you.
And she shakes her head and she says, "But what if Thunar? And she kind of just shakes her head and sinks to the ground. And as Melina sort of pulls herself up to a sitting position, she puts a hand on your shoulder and she says, "So much evil, Robar. So much evil.
I know.
If we can face it together." And that, I think, is where we will put an end to the session today. We will begin our next session with Melina talking to you, and then you indeed getting on the back of the eagle, and then I'll jump back over to them. But Will, good stuff, man. That was good. How did you... I really was curious to see how you were going to address all of that. How did you feel about it?
It was awesome. I really enjoyed getting to be Robar again, and man, he had some tough decisions today.
Yeah.
And some really good roles.
Oh my
for
god,
Robar.
he had some, especially the fight against Viglar. Holy crap!
Yeah,
it was like
solid.
in narrative too. You're like there, up thrust, like it all worked. You know?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Oh my God.
And yeah, really happy to get Melina back, and super excited for the next episode now to see what's going on and everything. So
Yep. Yep, and you've made another enemy, so that's great. You know, like that's wonderful. I feel like every time you guys are involved in a camp or like an underground setting, it ends up with you on fire and leaving, and people pissed off. Like that's basically how it all works. Oh, you're totally crying, dreaming of me. Well, then we did our job. If you felt connected to it, yeah. Will did really well with this, and I love, as I said, I like these solo sessions here and there because it's really enjoyable to kind of really get into, you know, the sort of mix and to see how all that stuff happened. So I was curious. It also would have been interesting if you had not hit the goblin. Saviga, if you hadn't hit the goblin, like what would have happened, you know. So anyway, also you got to see the certifiable badass that is known as Vigland. So
I'm into it.
Yep, that dude is still there. So that was awesome. Thank you, Will. This was great. Where will the fine people, besides on my channel, where will the fine people see you next?
I'm about to head over to the D&D channel, so you can see me there. Twitch.tv/D&D is where I'm going to be in like 10 minutes time. And usually the rest of the time I'm on twitch.tv/encounter roleplay. So you can find me there for other RPG and D&D stuff. So thank you for having me. I do really have to like run off right now.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. I figured as much. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And I will see you next Tuesday for the group.
See you guys soon. Lots of
Awesome.
love. Bye.
Bye-bye. See you. Can we get some love for Robar? See you, Will. Alrighty. And let me get rid of that so you don't see me in duplicate. All right, good stuff, folks. That was good. I'm glad that we managed to get that done. I wanted to sort of catch people up and see what he was doing. And as I say, it's always fun to be able to do little things like this to kind of get people involved. So and to sort of gradually bring people in so you feel like you know what's going on with the story, because he didn't just vanish for no reason. He vanished for actual reasons, and we got to see what those reasons were. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I am looking forward to hearing more about these adventures next time. Now, speaking of next time, I should mention that's important to talk about. So I will be back with you folks on Friday when I will be, this will be Friday night at about 9 p.m. I will be back doing the Legend of Zelda, the Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD. So I'll be doing my little mini marathon session of that. And then Saturday, I will be continuing at about a little bit later. Be on the lookout for that. I think it's going to be starting at about 8 p.m. as opposed to 7 p.m. And we'll be doing our Esper Genesis game, which is my sponsored space campaign, which is awesome too. And so if you enjoyed this, there's a lot more where that came from. Then we will be back to this campaign next Tuesday at 12. So we will return to our normal date and time. That will be with the full group. So Will will be joined by Amal, by Trendane, and by Terry Tunes, and we will be continuing with the group. That group has got its own problems down south, and obviously we got to finish up with what we just dealt with Robar, but we got most of it done, so I think we're in good shape as far as that's concerned, and I hope you enjoyed it. We are going to do a raid today. Normally I don't do daytime raids, but we are going to do one, but I think I'm just going to do what I would call an automatic one, basically. So I'm going to do one in which I'm going to basically do one where everyone waits, hopefully, and then I'm going to go over and raid collectively. So, you know, basically just stick around is more or less what I'm saying, and then we're going to head over. I think you will like the place that we go. But please do let people know about this channel. Please do check out, you can subscribe to the channel, you can do these other things, but please do that. And thank you, Rainy Keys. I really want to thank chat and Nonstop. I'm sorry that your inspiration didn't work, but it was the right time to do it, and it ended up sort of extending things a little bit, which ended up being fine. But I want to mention that it's really important to be able to get chat buy-in. Yeah, I could just do this and we could do it ourselves, and obviously for most of my life, I DM'd without having the benefit of an audience, where it was just me and my players. But having chat be a part of it really makes a difference to all of us. And so if you like what you've seen, please spread the word, because the more people that we get in, the more fun it is for everybody. And again, as a reminder, by the way, also on Thursdays, if some of you were only available on Thursdays, starting in a couple of weeks, we will be starting a couple of new campaigns on this channel, one of a game called The Clay That Woke, and one called Emberwind. I will not be involved as a player or GM in either one of those, but it will be on my channel. It is an official Arvin Eleron presentation, and Emberwind is actually, I actually do some writing for them, so you will not want to miss that. That's going to be happening in a couple of weeks, so we will end up having a total of 7 campaigns on this channel, and or GOG, 5 of which are coordinated with me, and 2 of which are not and are run by other people, but we're going to be broadening out the campaign over time, and so that's the deal with that. I also want to thank Wenchkin for the raid today, because that was awesome, thank you, and for all of you who were here participating, because that definitely made a big difference. Again, remember all the ways to support the stream. If you haven't done so already, make sure to check out the YouTube channel. Let me take care of that. Make sure to check out the YouTube channel. Make sure to check out with !ArvTube. Check out the Discord with !ArvCord. The Steam group with Discord. The Twitter with !ArvTweets. Don't forget about the merchandise area, !ArvShop. Definitely check out my Patreon. You can get cool stuff for you. You can get an epic character background written by yours truly. I am a professional author. Or you can get an epic poem written about you as well. I have one that's coming for Nordvol, coming fairly soon, so you can do that. You can check out that. You can also check out !Arvtreon, and also you can get a copy of one of my band's albums and blah 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 blah. You can also check out my subsystem, which is that sub button right above the window there. We are sitting at 59 subs. Goal is to hit 80 subs, and you get those cool custom emotes. You can actually do inspirations and things like that. So oh cool, Rainy Keys. Well, the other thing is, remember, I stream normally Tuesday, basically 12 to 3, and then 4 to 7 Eastern over at GOG. And then Friday, I usually stream from 8 or 9 p.m. until about 12 or 1 a.m. And then Saturday night, I usually stream from about 7 to 12:30 a.m. So those are, I usually stream Friday, Saturday nights, so you can catch one of those, but still. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, right, right. I understand. That's the benefit of having the YouTube channel. I have a lot of people that tell me that they really need the YouTube to be able to catch up on the story. So there's a lot of this that happened before, which you can check out. And again, it's worth seeing the full group working with each other. And again, you got to see how awesome Will is, so you should check him out again. But that is going to do it for me. Please stick around. When we do the raid, actually, when we do the raid, I would like it if you could do this. This would be a big help. If you are not a sub, please do the Arvanauts Have Landed followed by Twitch raid, lowercase Twitch, uppercase raid. If you are a sub, please do this, which is the Arvanauts Have Landed followed by Arvin E Hype, which looks like that. The Arvanauts Have Landed, Arvin E, A-R-V-A-N-E, uppercase H, lowercase Y-P-E. Please make sure you do that all together. Thank you, Rainy Keys. Have a good rest of your day as well. We're going to go raid someone who's going to be awesome. You guys will want to do it. I promise it'll be worth it. So please stick around for that. But I will see all of you wonderful people on Friday night for The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD, and then Saturday for some more role-playing goodness with Esper Genesis. Thank you to our official sponsor as well, Cubicle 7, and more Adventures of Middle-earth coming to you next week. That's it for me. I will see all of you wonderful people soon. Stick around for the raid, and much love, everyone. Everyone be good to each other. Have a good one.